Historical records tell us that while his courtiers ate off gold, Emperor Qianlong's dinner plates were made of cloisonne. Yet cloisonne is made from only copper and other basic minerals. So what techniques did the ancient craftsmen develop to transform such ordinary materials into something more precious than gold? And how is cloisonne's distinctive blue color obtained? Please watch Cloisonne in our unique handicraft series. The Cloisonne artifacts date from the Ming and Qing dynasties. Considering the 5,000 years of Chinese history, they are not very old. The materials used in cloisonne production are not as precious as gold, silver, or jade. Yet cloisonne works have commanded huge prices at auction in recent years. Every year, some 1.4 million people visit the Forbidden City, which is not only the biggest palace in the world, but also the biggest museum, home to the world's largest collection of cloisonne. According to the records of the Forbidden City, Emperor Qianlong always used a cloisonne dinner service, while the officials who dined with him used tableware made of gold, silver, or porcelain. This cloisonne factory is the only one of its kind still in existence. It employs the cloisonne making techniques used during the Ming and Qing dynasties. In this filigree workshop, Zhong Liansheng and his team are making a replica of a round vase with lotus vine patterns. The original is housed in the Palace Museum at the Forbidden City. The vase is at the stage of soldering the filigree. Cloisonne is often mistaken for high-class porcelain. In truth, it ought to be classified as metalwork. The craftsman first beat red copper sheets to form the base of the vase. Red copper is among the purest copper found. Chinese craftsmen learned a long time ago that pure copper is highly ductile. A piece of the size of a drop of water can be hammered into a thin sheet several meters square. The craftsman draws a checkerboard on the copper base and then adds the outline of a decorative design. Their delicate and complex designs are one of the main features of cloisonne objects. The figures will not be drawn with ink or paint, but brought out by copper wire. Filigree soldering is one of the most important and demanding steps in cloisonne making. The copper wires that are attached to the base must follow the design precisely. During the soldering, the copper wire cannot be adjusted very often for fear of damaging it. All the designs must be inlaid at one go to ensure that the curves look smooth and fluent. An experienced craftsman can weld several pieces of copper wire at the same time. The copper wire is only 1.35 millimeters thick, but the strip in the craftsman's hand is a centimeter wide since it's made up of 8 copper wires. The next step is to glue several copper wires together and bend them to form the various designs. The copper wire designs are then heated to remove the binder. Heating also protects the design's symmetry. The copper wire designs are stuck onto the copper base. A special glue is used, made from a Chinese herb, Blatilla tuber. This pure, natural binder is used solely for keeping the copper wire adhered to the copper base. During the firing that follows, the binder will be burnt away. Historical records tell us that while his courtiers ate off gold, Emperor Qianlong's dinner plates were made of cloisonne. Yet cloisonne is made from only copper and other basic minerals. So what techniques did the ancient craftsmen develop to transform such ordinary materials into something more precious than gold? And how is cloisonne's distinctive blue color obtained? Please watch Cloisonne in our unique handicraft series. The craftsman welds the copper wire onto the base. The temperature of the acetylene flame can reach more than 3,000 degrees, sufficient to create a firm bond. However, during the Ming and Qing dynasties, craftsmen could not generate such a high temperature. So how did they weld the wire and base together? An electron microscope reveals that the copper base and the filigree elements of the Qing dynasty cloisonne samples are made of pure copper. It also shows that the welding flux has a relatively high zinc content. With zinc present, a temperature of just 1000 degrees is needed for welding, or brazing, as this particular method is known. Around 210 BC, craftsmen used the brazing method in making the bronze chariots and bronze horses to be buried with Emperor Qin Shi Huang. Craftsmen at the Beijing enamel factory will use the same method to weld copper wire onto a copper base. The method requires a lower temperature. The base and wire on this cloisonne vase are made of pure copper, with a melting point of 1084 degrees. If the soldering heat were higher than this, the copper of the wire and base might melt. But using the brazing technique, this problem is avoided. The craftsman welds the wire to the base at least twice to make sure that the welding agent is applied evenly and the two components are stuck firmly together. Accuracy of time and temperature is essential in the welding process. The ideal temperature for firing this medium-sized spherical vase is between 800 and 900 degrees, and the duration is roughly 2 minutes. The craftsman uses his judgment to decide when the vase should be removed from the kiln. The vase now needs a thorough cleaning, since it's covered with residue from the soldering agent and glue. The base is placed in diluted acid solution. After that, it's washed and brushed until it begins to shine. It's the middle of spring. Several teams have spent 4 months working on this vase. But still, it remains only a work of copper. More needs to be done to transform it into a cloisonne work of art. Blue is the most common color of cloisonne. Therefore, the coloring process is called blue painting and the firing blue firing. After being fired, the granulated glaze will become the cloisonne's most striking decoration. The glaze is a special design for cloisonne objects. It gives them a shine like that of porcelain. It took Miao Jianmin many months of research and investigation to uncover the secret formula. The materials used in making cloisonne glaze are not very expensive. But the old formula is highly ingenious.
起最主要的基体作用的是马牙石，是石英、二氧化硅这种材料，而其他的那几种材料呢，你看，比如说硼硝，对吧？这个锭粉、硼砂，这些材料在里头起什么作用呢？对吧？它是呢起到助溶的作用，对吧？另外呢还有比如说像这个紫石氟化钙，是吧？它的化学组成是氟化钙和这个砒霜，三氧化二砷。那这两种原料呢，它在里边起到什么呢？起到一个澄清这个起到一个这个澄清剂的作用和乳浊剂的作用。
The Qing Dynasty craftsmen, though they knew nothing about the periodic table of chemical elements, still learned to make paints from metals. They mixed gold foil in the glaze powder to produce the color pink and oxides of manganese to produce purple. The material used in producing the blue glaze of cloisonne objects is cobalt oxide. The delightful luster of a cloisonne object is obtained through firing for 7 to 8 hours. The temperature must be above 1200 degrees. However, since the melting point of the red copper base is only 1084 degrees, the task is seemingly impossible. The craftsmen of the past developed a complex method to solve this problem. The same method is still used by their counterparts today. All the materials needed for making cloisonne are smelted in a traditional style furnace until they are fused together. The craftsman uses his experience to decide when the firing should stop. During the smelting process, the materials become as hard as glass and as lustrous as jade. The colors are extremely bright. The glaze is then ground for 6 hours into a powder. Historical records tell us that while his courtiers ate off gold, Emperor Qianlong's dinner plates were made of cloisonne. Yet cloisonne is made from only copper and other basic minerals. So what techniques did the ancient craftsmen develop to transform such ordinary materials into something more precious than gold? And how is cloisonne's distinctive blue color obtained? Please watch Cloisonne in our unique handicraft series. Zhong Liansheng's team is discussing the plan for coloring the duplicate vase. It's a major challenge to reproduce the colors on this cultural relic. The powdered glaze will change color during firing. So they need to produce several samples before they can make a final decision on how to proceed. The craftsman uses a special tool called a blue gun, along with a straw, to apply the glaze in the spaces in the copper wire frames on the base. The water keeps the glaze in place. The copper wire frames are now filled with bright colored glaze. In front of each craftsman are 100 saucers filled with different colored glazes. The craftsmen know exactly where each saucer is. The coloring needs not only tremendous care and patience, but also artistic sensitivity. The first step in the coloring process is to fill all the gaps in the copper wire frames. The next step is to draw lotus patterns on the vase using colored glaze. The color of the unfired glaze is drab. It will only gain its bright luster when the vase is fired. This step is known as blue firing. At this stage, a temperature of only 900 degrees is required, too low to do any damage to the copper wire and base. In a matter of just a few minutes, the glaze will gain a shine and a degree of transparency. The correct formula and clever design give the copper and glaze basically the same coefficient of expansion. During the firing, the glaze melts. When it cools down, it adheres tightly to the copper base. The first layer of glaze, applied by the coloring craftsman, having saturated the area, has subsided in places. This is caused by the glaze shrinking during the firing process. Because of this, the glaze has to be painted and fired 3 or 4 times until it is flush with the copper wire. The project to duplicate the vase started in January. Now at the end of April, it's finally ready for the last firing. Before natural gas became available, CLOISONNE craftsmen had to light the kiln 4 hours in advance. Master Jiang has been firing CLOISONNE since 1979. He used to light his kiln at 4 o'clock in the morning and keep it burning for 6 hours until the heat rose to the temperature he required. After the first firing, the vase already looks quite impressive. But further rigorous work is still required.
它还是有高低起伏的，因为它自然的烧成的，所以呢，下面这道工序呢，就是景泰蓝制作的第4大工序，就是进入磨光工序了。
The craftsman in charge of the polishing is generally regarded as the technical director in cloisonne making. He has to keep his mind sharp while working in a very noisy environment. He must know every step of the cloisonne making process in case there are errors to remedy. He rubs the surface of the cloisonne first with emery. Then he continues the polishing with yellow stone, which has a finer texture. Finally, he applies basswood carbon. Giving cloisonne its beautiful luster and curves is a tedious and time-consuming process. Master Wang, who has been a cloisonne polisher for more than 30 years, spent 3 days working on the vase. During this time, the vase was painted with white glaze and returned to the kiln for firing twice. The polishing of the vase was finished in early May. In the final step, it will be gilded. Cloisonne is gilded to prevent the copper from oxidizing and to make it look even more resplendent. The artwork for the vase was drawn in January. It was gilded in May. In all, the various craftsmen spent 4 months making this beautiful object less than half a meter in height. The skill has been practiced by ethnic Shui women in southwest China for 1,000 years. Nobody knows for sure how the art of producing embroidery from the hair of horses' tails originated, but explanations are found in legend. Why is it that horsetail embroidery is so closely associated with slings for carrying babies? Find out in Horsetail Embroidery, part of our unique handicraft series.